I think that for me, one of the important things is developing I call it the alternative voice. So the alternative voice is the one that speaks back to that fearfulness that lives inside you. The voice that says, okay, I shouldn't do that, or that's scary. And a voice, I often use a voice that talks back saying, it is scary, but it's going to be good for you. It is going to hurt, but that means you're going to grow. So that ulterior or alternative voice has been very useful for me.
That's Deepak Shukla, and you are listening to the All Things Risk podcast. Welcome back, one and all, to the All Things Risk podcast. My name is Ben Catania. I'm your host. It's great to be back with another episode of the show. This is where we use the lenses of risk and uncertainty to explore some interesting and fascinating topics. This is the best and most eclectic long-form podcast about risk and uncertainty that you will find. And I've dialed it down to an episode every 3 weeks or so due to other commitments. And it's reminded me of how wonderful it is to release a new show and how great it is to connect with all of you. So thank you very much for being here and listening. This one is about quite a few things, and one that I found a little bit hard to pin down, but if I had to define it by one word, that would be fear. But before we get into it, a couple of things. First off, this episode is brought to you by Audible, where you can choose from over 180,000 audiobooks. And as a listener to the All Things Risk podcast, you can get a free 30-month trial that includes a free audiobook that is yours to keep. If you're in the US, just go to audibletrial.com/allthingsrisk. If you're here in the UK, click on the link in the show notes. And secondly, if you or someone you know is in the process of taking or making a difficult decision, perhaps you or they might benefit from a little bit of training. I'll be running a webinar on decision making on Tuesday, the 27th of November. Learn how to up your decision-making game. Find out more, go to the link in the show notes. Right, so with that out of the way, let's do this. My guest today is Deepak Shukla. Deepak is many things. He's the founder and CEO of Pearl Lemon SEO, a successful search engine optimization company, but we're not here to talk about SEO. He is an endurance athlete. He's also a rapper, and many other things. And if there's something that underpins what Deepak is all about, it's a willingness to face his fears and to do difficult things, and the power of doing all of that. Deepak grew up here in London. He is the son of an immigrant family from India, and as you'll hear, he has followed a very non-linear and unconventional path, but one that has led him to some very interesting places in his career and his life, and that has included the TEDx stage, kickboxing in Brazil, ultramarathons, Ironman triathlons, a short stint as a tax consultant, his rap career, and loads more. And we get into all of that, and along the way, we cover some very valuable ground, including facing uncertainty, managing your career, having an experimental mindset, dealing with mental health challenges as well, which is something that is very important, particularly for us men to talk more openly about. We get into entrepreneurism and the importance of being in that experimental mode of thinking. There are loads of great lessons here, and Deepak is a very interesting guy, so let's get into it and meet Deepak Shukla. Enjoy. Deepak, welcome to the All Things Risk podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Ben, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me down.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I was telling you that I don't have a set of standard questions, but Pretty much for all of my guests, I do have this question, which is, when you get asked what it is you do, what's your answer?
It's always a difficult question. I think that today I prefer the least complex answer as possible. I just say a lot of the time, to be honest with you, I work in marketing. I run an SEO agency, as you know, because that's what I do for business. So that's the answer that I give people, because I prefer not to get into kind of the long conversations. And I've also discovered that people want an answer they can understand. And often with the society that we live in, it's not, people typically fear or reject what they don't understand, and they want an easy answer. What do you do? Oh, I'm in teaching. Oh, okay, cool. I get that. Brilliant. And so that's what I tell people, actually, to be honest with you. I say I work in marketing. And then if my partner is there, Daniela, she will nudge me and start getting really annoyed and say, why are you underselling yourself? What are you doing? And then other people might speak up for me. But if it was you and I and we were at a party or at a networking event, I'd say I work in marketing. And it was only then if someone says, oh, so what exactly do you do within marketing? Then I'd think, okay, well, they're actually asking a question that they're interested in hearing the answer to. So that's actually typically what I tell people. However, I run an SEO agency. So we help companies rank on Google, of course. And then, what I enjoy doing, and what I am trying to build outside of that is the answer to that's very different. And what I've done, of course, is very different. I enjoy sport, of course, as you know. I've got an Ironman next weekend in Copenhagen before I go to see my partner in Italy.
So you're tapering now.
Yeah. Exactly. I've done a half and kind of between a half and a full in the last couple of weeks as well. I've done 3 different triathlons in the last, this will be my 3rd. And I did an ultra a couple of maybe 2 months ago. So I'm doing quite a decent amount of physical activity. That's what I do for fun. I do enjoy it. And then, outside of that, I'm tinkering. I'm trying to, I've launched an online course recently. We're running ads to it, and I'm following the whole philosophy that I've read about, sell it before you actually build it, which has been really interesting. And it's work. I've for the first time made 5 course sales for a course I've not yet built. So that's really interesting to me. It's fascinating, to be honest with you, about the whole psychology behind it. And
we'll get into all of that. Let's put a pin on that sort of sell it before you build it type of thing, and we'll get into endurance. But did you grow up here in London, or
so
where did you grow up?
I grew up in a place called Uxbridge, which is the edge of West London for the audience. My family are from India. I'm British Indian, and my parents moved over in the 60s. My mum and dad. The first time they met, they got it's even as traditional stories go, it's pretty out there. The first time that my mum and dad saw each other, they got married when my mum was 11 and my dad was 13. This was in a village in India. They then came to the UK separately. So my mum got married to my dad, was put on a plane or maybe a boat at that time with her dad, my grandfather. Didn't see her husband, my dad, for 2 years. Flew back to India to see him, got pregnant with my sisters at 15. That was what allowed my dad to get a passport to even come to the UK, because my mum was pregnant with his children. And that's where the kind of Britishness of our story begins. And that's where my family are from and kind of their story.
So it was a different world back then, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And it's been really interesting kind of growing up and, children being raised by children, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. You've got people that are in their 30s and people like me in their 40s that don't have children and are, wow, what a huge responsibility that is. But back then, it's still a huge responsibility, but I suppose people approached it differently.
Absolutely. I think that, the risk that what my parents went through weren't seen as being risks back then. I think it was seen as being the thing that's done, and it was just you kind of got on with it. Yeah. And interestingly, of all of the chaos and turbulence that caused in our upbringing, when I say our, I mean me and my brothers and sisters, it also gave me the kind of mental hardiness. My parents just got on with stuff. Okay, well, we need to work 100-hour weeks at Heathrow Airport. Okay, well, Dad's not going to be around for dinner because Dad needs to work. So there's no such thing as a family dinner. And that's not, for example, something that we have. We often eat alone, sometimes even in the same house. I'll be in one room, my dad will be in another, and people look at it and find it strange. And it's like, this is how we grew up, man. Most of the time my dad wasn't around because he was doing shift work, or then my mum was doing shift work, because all of these different kind of things. And I found that as I've kind of grown up, and, you know, gone out into the world, let's say, and decided that, hey, I want to, you know, leave my job behind when I was at Deloitte, and kind of take an adventure that, okay, well, if you're going to do something, get on with it. And, yeah.
Well, let's get into that, because what did you want to be, if anything? Well, what was it that you dreamed of being when you growing up?
Absolutely. I you know, I had no sense of what I dreamed of doing when I grew up. The value that, or the hope that I think my parents had, was really that we just got an education. You know, my mum dropped out of school when she was 14. My dad never had a formal education. You know, they're from a village in India where, you know, my parents, you know, this was rural India. Parents don't have birth certificates. My dad happened to have decided his birthday's on the 31st of December. So every year there's been a big hoo-ha growing up, because we're like, there's no New Year's Eve party with our friends. We go and celebrate it as a family. So this was the kind of environment that I grew up in. And, you know, the hopes and dreams for my parents, for us, were really that we just went to school, and that we finished school, and then we got, you know, an education and then a job. So I think that, you know, I was influenced at university ultimately by more so by the people around me, my friends, than my parents. My parents were just like, okay, you're in university. I was at Warwick. And
what did you study?
I studied English literature. So I was studying Shakespeare, Keats, Wordsworth, Dostoevsky, all of this stuff. And then my friends were economics students, because that's who I roomed with. And the reason that I was an arts student rooming with economics and business students was because my household was a guy from Georgia, Tbilisi, another girl from Sierra Leone, and another guy from Nigeria. And I look back on it, and I realized that there was a huge commonality in terms of a little bit of the migrant experience
sure.
that we all shared, and that was what brought us together. And that was, I think, very instrumental in the decision to go and apply for a corporate job,
right?
Because that was the expectation that was placed upon these guys,
and that's what it means to have made it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's because you wouldn't have had that opportunity in India or Georgia or wherever they
absolutely.
They come from. Yeah.
So, you know, in the case, for example, of Zorab, the Georgian guy, you know, his parents were paying for, you know, an international education because he wasn't in the EU, so they were paying, you know, 15,000 pounds per year, whatever it might be. It was a lot of money. You know, Babaola from Nigeria, same thing. So they had parents that were investing a lot into their education, and the clear return was, well, you're at Warwick, you're studying economics at Warwick Business School, it's considered to be prestigious. Go and you know, Zorab went to work, I think, at Ernst & Young, then in Deutsche Bank. Bablo went to work for a hedge fund, I can't remember. Amy went off to work in kind of shell engineering, and then I was going to go and work at Deloitte.
Yes,
this is what everyone was doing. But of course, I was still an arts student, Ben. You know, I was still much more interested in the creative kind of approach and in experience. So then there was a huge shock when I really kind of turned up post graduation. I got the opportunity to have a deferred entry, meaning that I graduated in the year of 2008. But I had the internship in 2007 for Deloitte. When I was at university, and they were like, okay, brilliant, you can have a graduate job, and if you want to, you can defer your entry, meaning that you can start a year after you finish school. And I was like, oh my God, amazing, I'll have that.
Yeah.
And they give you what's called the £7,000 golden handshake, meaning they give you £7,000, and they're like, you can pay it back, it's interest free, and we'll just take it a little bit out from your salary, and you can use that for your year off to go and do things. So I immediately took the money, and I kind of pissed off to South America for a couple of months. And you know, I think that I discovered through turning up at Deloitte, as I eventually did, and starting in the tax management consulting department and looking at how we could help, you know, corporate institutions
minimize their tax.
Yeah, ultimately, yes. Exactly. Yeah. It's like I work for the big man, so we can stick it to the other big man, which was HMRC. And it wasn't. I very quickly discovered and I mean like first week discovered that what the frick am I doing here? This is not me. This is not who I am. And I think that what was fascinating about getting that job was the challenge of getting the job, because I was the only I was fortunate to be the only one who didn't have any math background. So in interview, I was extremely tested because I was an art student, and even for my A levels, I studied English, history, philosophy, and psychology. So one of the questions was, why are you here? You have no math background, you have no business background, and you want to become a management consultant in the audit and tax. You want to become an auditor or a taxman, and I found that challenge of psychometric testing and learning how to do E-tray exercises and verbal and numerical reasoning, and then go into these environments and talk about business. My God, I was in seminars talking about the meaning of, Wordsworth's poetry typically by day. So the challenge was very interesting to me. And then I got to the other side of the challenge and I didn't like what the reward was. So that was a very significant moment of change for me. And I think it came to a head when I went to a kind of networking event once I'd started the graduate job. And you go and meet, some of the directors, the people that are like 6 to 8 levels above you. Because I'm an associate. Then you've got junior associate, and then you've got senior associate.
It's quite a ladder, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. There's like 7.
It's more of a pyramid rather than a ladder, because they kind of shed you. They're fewer as you go up.
Brilliant. And when you meet someone who's much closer to the pinnacle of the same game, the Division 3 talking to the Division 1 footballer, if you will, and you think, okay, so this is what success looks like. Success sucked.
Why? What did you see?
I saw that it became a political dogfight. I saw that was already happening in the department I was in. The contracted hours were 9:30 to 5:30, and people began immediately, in terms of my graduate cohort, if you will, of the guys that came in, began coming in immediately at 8:45. Then someone wanted to outdo the other and come in at 8:30. Then one guy started working through lunch just so. Because one of the typical things, and it's supremely well built. They do these round robin emails where they say fastest grad first to reply can get the job. We've got some overflow, and these were emails that everyone was CC'd into.
Yes.
So it was like, right, if I stay an extra time, someone quickly discovers if I get in early, I can catch maybe someone who's slightly senior who needs help, and then the guy Frank above me will ask me to help, and this whole kind of thing, and it became also more about the political side of it, stay in, and then also, we're going to be going through particular aspects of tax legislation today, Deepak. Here's the handbook. We're going to be studying this and doing that, and I just found
sounds brutal.
Yeah, that's for me been harder than running ultramarathons. I tell you, because ultramarathons of themselves are hard, but I enjoy the process of them. Here, I didn't enjoy the process. I wasn't really good at the process because I'm not very detail orientated. I was good at kind of showing up for the tests, but when we got into the minutiae of the work, I would have, I think what people don't appreciate about the corporate environment is that it's just as competitive as entrepreneurship. I think that's often lost when people play up what it is to be an entrepreneur, and it really frustrates me because it's so hard to make it to the pinnacle of your success in the corporate environment, and you can be sideswiped for reasons that really relate nothing to your ability, nothing about your ability to do the job. And in entrepreneurship, it's a lot fairer that way. Man, you know what? If you're really good at what you do and you know how to get it done, it's a very fair environment, and it's not the same in a corporate environment. And I always take my hat off, to be honest with you, to anyone who can climb the career ladder, because I'm like, that's really, really hard to do, I think. So that's a bit of a kind of side note, but I think I wanted to make that clear because I in some ways I feel I admire a lot of people who have climbed the corporate ladder, because my small experience of it is like, wow, you got to want it. You have to want it. You can't go in half-assed or half-cocked. Yeah.
Well, I think you also have to have a bit of a sense of, you have to have a sense of purpose around why you're there. So for some people, I find so possibly tax wasn't your bag, but some people might be fascinated by tax, and they might really relish the intellectual challenge associated with helping a business minimize its tax or
definitely.
whatever. Others might find that interesting for a while, but then get a little bit burnt out on that, and then others, sadly, they might be there for 25 years and then realize, holy shit, I have no purpose in my life, and you do see that, right?
Yeah.
You do see people who, whether it's divorce or they get addicted to whatever
Absolutely.
substances or this kind of, that sadly does happen, and there and sometimes I think conversely, some of those environments are great for just building some skills, and then moving on and using those skills somewhere else.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree, and I think that you're definitely right that tax was not my forte, so I would have.
It's not mine either, and I don't know who. But there are those who it is.
Meet my cousin; she lives for it. She's brilliant. She sends tax updates in our family WhatsApp groups.
So how long were you at Deloitte?
I was there for 3 or 4 months before
really?
I
Okay.
resigned.
Right,
I was
right.
the longest
and
time.
what do people say? They say like, you're crazy. This is.
Well, I wanted to leave and go and be a rapper.
Oh, okay.
So that was the really strange. The longest time I've been kind of in employment has been 6 months.
Right.
And I think the biggest risk, really, that underpins anyone's story of success. This is for me like the number one thing. The biggest thing that underpins the biggest risk you can take is not becoming self-reliant about being able to generate an income without relying upon an infrastructure. For me, that's the singular biggest thing, because there's a very big practicality to, we could, and we'll go on perhaps to talk about an adventure that I've done and how I plan for it. But money talks, meaning that if you can't generate an income to live a life of your dreams or of your choice or in your own way, then you're always going to have that loop or that struggle of having to either return to employment or return to some form of, and that can undercut anything that you want to do. So I think that leaving Deloitte, and we go back to that story, the one thing that I very quickly realized, and that was, the most beautiful thing about leaving that job behind, because previous to that, I'd worked at, the Odeon Cinema, I worked at Nat, I'd had a series of different jobs ultimately. But what I'd never really learned was, how can I build something for how can I build freedom into my life, right? And I approached you about hopefully being on your podcast, and you of course looked me up a little bit, and you've seen that I've done some different things, and that's interesting. But what's underneath all of that is me at 23 years old, when I resigned and handed in my resignation, realizing, Deepak, you need to make money. Like, you need to make money, because otherwise anything else you want to do is going to fall to the wayside, and any vision that you have or path that you go on will very quickly get crushed by the absence of having money. And I think that that was the singular biggest thing that I recognized, and that involved a lot of preparation and a lot of learning and a journey, because it was that but by fixing that problem, it allowed me to go and live in Brazil and fight Thai kickboxing. It allowed me to apply to the British Special Forces. It allowed me to go and run ultramarathons whilst I was living in Madeira. And we could talk about all of those things, but there's one consistency across all of them. You need to figure out how to fund your own lifestyle.
Right. So how did you figure that out?
Sure. I realized that my skill set was reading, because I was an art student. I was good at reading books. I was very good at reading books. That was something that I did for 3 years. I was like, I'm solid in this space. Okay, so let me see if I can initially begin to read my way to success. What do I want to try and do? I want to generate an income, and I want to generate an income, doing something that I enjoy more than Deloitte. I don't want to go out and get another job. I knew that. And by handing in my resignation, I did burn my own bridges, because I left a little bit acrimoniously, because I was only 3 or 4 months into the program. This was not the done thing to do in 2009 when the global credit crunch hit, and half of my econ friends couldn't get jobs anywhere, or being fired from, the Lehman Brothers or whatever it was. And I was like, I'm about to resign from Deloitte and I'm an art student. They're like, dude, there's no way back. Yeah. Like you once you're out, you're not going to get, they're not going to, there or not. So I went onto Amazon, and I Googled, I Amazoned Well, first of all, to be honest with you, I Googled business bestsellers, business bestseller lists, and then it took me to Amazon lists. And then I found literally a top 10 list, and I bought every book on that list.
Okay.
And I spent about 2 months reading every book.
Right.
And I thought, I now have some form of understanding as to what it takes to try and build something by yourself. So I spent a lot of time kind of acquiring data. So there's about, I don't know, 20 to 40 hours of reading, kind of taking notes, reading and being like, okay, interesting. I didn't know that. You know, the 4-hour work week, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, the Secret, and, you know, The Alchemist, and then some other big, other business books I forget now. I kind of took that and I thought, okay, let me try and apply this to ultimately what was building a recording studio, because I wanted to be a rapper.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. Keep going. We'll throw the rapping part into this. So
I wanted to be a rapper, but I recognized that I needed to make money.
Right.
Otherwise,
you can just. What does that mean, just to be a rapper?
Exactly. It's like, well, how are you going to actually get paid for what you do? Because I came from the school of hard knocks. My parents said, you can come back home, but we're not going to support you financially. You need to contribute to the household.
Yes.
You're the one that's choosing to give up your career. And if you want to do
Were they disappointed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I think it's normal for them to be disappointed. Absolutely normal. I mean, you know, as I told you, they came from an environment of they saw scarcity, and the approach is you hard work your way to success, and you put your head down, you take what you get. My dad
bite their own arm off to get a job at Deloitte. Right?
Exactly. And none of my other, you know, everyone in my family at that time, you know, and you know, we're Indians. We've got my parents had 5. You know, my auntie, there's like 15, 20 like cousins and stuff, and we're kind of a cohort of our own, if you will. Everyone was in jobs. So no one really got what it is that I want to do. So, you know, I knew that I had something to prove for them, but also for myself, because I didn't want to go back and get a job. I didn't know what the alternative was, but I figured I could read my way to success. So I figured that, well, if I want to be a rapper, I'm going to need recording equipment, because paying to go and record isn't sustainable, really. So why don't I build a recording studio, charge other people to come and record at my studio, and then also record at my own studio. So that then, after reading those books, that was really the idea that came into my mind based upon reading the books. They called it about like vertical integration of economies or something like that. This whole, I don't remember the technical terms, but produce and sell. And
if you vertically integrate, it means you've got all the chain of everything.
There you go. So you've got the terminology, like, you know, I built my own chain, if you will. This is the smart thing, and I was like, brilliant. That sounds sensible. Let's do that. So then I switched my reading. My reading then switched from reading about business to reading about building a recording studio. Right. So then I did exactly the same thing. I went and Googled build a home recording studio. And then this time there were a couple of books that were scattered. And then there were more kind of blogs and forums. But then I read everything else there. And then again, I started call recording studios. I started to find out, I was laughed at on the phone when I said, I've got a £3,000 budget. I want to build a professional recording studio. And this is 2010, 9, 10. You know, these days, of course, you get a MacBook, you get a snowball mic, and away you go. And away you go. At that time, people were used to seeing these big mixing desks and stuff. And I then really, so I built a sound booth by going to a local carpenter's with my dad to just get some wood, like 2x4s to build, like, and we paid a local Indian builder, one of my dad's friends, like 70 quid to kind of make the sliding door. I Googled, you know, soundproofing, because apparently you need soundproofing, and it was like, what is soundproofing made of? It was like carbon fiberglass. I discovered at B&Q you can buy carbon fiberglass, it's loft insulation for like 3 or 4 quid. And I was like, brilliant, okay, let me buy a couple of bags. And I was like, well, this looks horrible, what can I do? We can cover it up. So then I'd ask my mum, because we're an Indian family, so Indian ladies wear saris. So then my mum had lots of old dresses in storage, and then I'd use that to kind of pad up the insulation. But then I was like, well, this looks really crap. And then we were like, well, we can go get more kind of quilts from Southall, like Little India. So then we go there to get these, like, pay £1 a yard. So I'd buy like 5 yards of black sheeting, got like wood staple guns to staple it up against the actual inner the revolving doors of the studio. I asked a couple of friends saying, what is the cheapest kit that I can get? And I started reading a book called Guerrilla Home Recording Studios about how to set up a mixing desk. And
I'm gonna look that one up, because as a podcaster, I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there was a whole world out there about how to achieve kind of Beyonce level recordings in your own house.
Right.
And they said that actually there's a couple of real important things that as clean a sound as possible, and then you can achieve kind of a lot of the things through Logic on your MacBook. So then I just saw and because I had rapped already. Rapping was something that I'd done previous to university. So then I reached out to my friends who had produced some of my music historically and said, can you teach me the 80-20 of how to use Logic? And they were like, and how to use a mixing desk. And they're like, brilliant. So there's all these buttons. And he's like, actually, a lot of this stuff is fancy, but the only place I work in is this little bit here. He's like, learn to use that, and the rest of it you'll pick up along the way. That was the kind of journey that led me to ultimately handing in my resignation. But I also had my first client who came in.
So did you do this whilst you're still at Deloitte?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was doing it nights.
Okay.
I handed in my resignation and I had
that's
about a month.
I love that, because you didn't just quit without a plan. You sound like you had some sort of plan.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I knew that I wanted to resign. I tried to figure out what it is that I could do. I read the books for the first 2 months. I discovered what the plan was, and then I handed in my resignation, and then I had a further 1 month to execute the actual strategy. Yeah. Before that, I was like, well, I need some information, because I know that I want to do something, but I don't even know what I don't know. So I need to learn. And that was so it was a 3-month period. Yeah. I was there maybe 7 months altogether. Right. And after like 3 or 4 months, it was like, this is.
And then you started to build the exit strategy rather than just drop everything.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important for people who are trying to make a decision or make a change, is that you don't just, it's not night and day. You need to think it through. Yeah. And you need to have a way of just transitioning intelligently, which you did.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's important with as you said, to plan and prepare, but also in your mind have a firm date of exit, because otherwise the other thing that
you can go on and on forever.
Exactly.
And then you get dragged into, well, this is not bad, or I don't feel as shitty as I did the other day, so maybe tax is great. Maybe
exactly. So the way that I activated that part was by telling a lot of my friends who were in the firm, I'm going to quit. And they were like, oh, you're going to quit. And it became almost a self-fulfilling thing.
Yeah, and you gave yourself some accountability to them. Otherwise it would just in some vague And slowly, they sort of say, "Well, you've been talking about that forever. You're never going to actually do it, and maybe I won't." Yeah. It gets comfortable, and then meanwhile, your soul is starting to crumble and die.
Exactly. And that was hugely important, because I felt that I had my word that I needed to live by, and by telling others that this is what I'm going to do, and by March, I'll be gone, and it was like maybe December. I was like, okay, wow. Yeah, I've said it. Now I've got to act in service of what I've said.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. I love that, and very, very instructive.
Yeah.
Where did the rapping come from? When did you get into?
Yeah, I am 15 years old. I got introduced to DJ Luck and MC Neat. They had this song called "A Little Bit of Luck." A little bit of luck we can, and it was like, oh, this is cool, and it was literally, this is cool. That was the feeling that I had when I heard it, like on tapes back in the day, that began a journey into discovering that I loved music, I loved rapping. I had no sense of how to do it, and I mean that was like really a whole thing. Previous to going to university, I ended up becoming part of a group. We've got music videos that I can point you towards on YouTube.
We'll put them in the show notes.
Okay, yeah. So there's a video from when I was 18, I think, still on YouTube, 10 years ago, with me and my group and other stuff subsequently. I think that I loved music, and that was my calling at the time, but the world colluded in taking me towards what was considered to be the more reliable career path. The musicians that I was doing music with were, in and out of school. Education was going great. They'd maybe be in and out of kind of prison. and the environment was very different to what I was perhaps doing academically. But the shared interest was, we want to MC.
But it's interesting that you took English literature, because rapping and
absolutely,
and literature. I mean, rapping is a form of modern literature in many ways. So Tupac Shakur was, he was acted in Shakespeare plays and this sort of thing. So it's interesting that you went into that academic environment. But I have a feeling that you still held on to that. That informed your choice of what to study, and you held on to it.
Yeah, my superpower was like words, and whether it was reading or writing them. And definitely, I think that even though our friendship kind of crumbled as my path led me towards academia and English literature, and I've got songs that actually relate to this exact experience. But what remained was still kind of my love for music, and I just didn't understand the path, because I didn't have the tools then. I hadn't read the books about business. I was reading the books about Shakespeare.
Right.
And my regret really was not having an appropriate... It's not maybe necessarily regret. I just think, looking back, I wouldn't have studied English. I probably would have left school behind, and I would have continued on my journey after finishing A-levels as an 18-year-old and continuing to grow with my group. And the education that I would love to have had was kind of the business of music. Okay, you want to be a musician, and that's amazing, Deepak, but learn how to market yourself. Learn about how to rank on YouTube. Learn about how to make your SoundCloud go viral. Learn about the songs that you should make, and learn about the strategy. Most of my songs were music of passion, but there was no connection with kind of commercial success. And that was problematic at 17, 18, when I had the choice of going to, Warwick to study English, and that was a prestigious university versus it was a no-brainer at that time, because I didn't have any kind of mentorship in the music environment with this is your route to actually doing something from this. Whereas with education and then a subsequent career, it was just much clearer. So I took the sensible choice, and it's like that cliche, if I knew then what I know now, the choices I would have made at that stage would have been very different.
Yeah, but we're never in that position anyway. So there's no in some ways there's no point in really thinking about it in those terms. But similarly, I think that studying literature, I'm not so sure that you would have benefited from, say, studying business. I don't know, but I see a lot of young people who they study business, but okay, what type of business do you want to get into? Why? And and those questions.
I think just the books, to be honest with you, Ben. I don't even think, I think
there's loads of knowledge you can get now anyway, without having to get a degree.
Exactly. One of my favorite books that I read was a personal MBA.
Right.
I can't remember who it's by. But that was one of the books at the time. They're like, this is like doing an MBA in business, but in a book. And I was like, oh, well, that's a nice title.
Yeah, that's good.
That's like $7. I'll buy that.
Yeah.
And that introduced the concept of, it took me a few years to implement, but shadow testing. That's what it's called in the personal MBA. The concept of build the sales page, offer the product, offer the screens, and then sell the product, and then build the product.
And then build the product.
Yep. Yeah. And I've historically, when I've tried to launch courses on Udemy, on Skillshare, I've done it the other way around. This has been the first ever time that I've done it this way around, that I built the sales page, I built an email sequence, I spent $1,000 in ad spend, and we've returned $5,500 for a course that I've not yet built. And the key to the success has been finally implementing something that I read years ago.
Well, that's kind of a good risk management or uncertainty management principle, because you could invest all the time and resource to build this thing, but if there's no market for it, then that's done. So you've just wasted all of that.
Exactly. And I did a lot of that.
Yeah, right. Whereas if you test it and then you start to, is there something here? Is there something here? Then you kind of keep pushing in that direction. I'm a big believer in taking little experiments. So, if you're interested in country X or Spain, for example, rather than just, I'm going to move to Spain forever, go there for a month and see what you think, and then go back and then just then go there for half a year, and then
I agree.
and then you can build your way up, where you say, well, actually, Spain, I'm not so sure about Spain. I'll pivot in like Japan, or whatever.
Exactly.
Just making it up.
Couldn't have said it better. No, but brilliant, and that really typifies a lot of the kind of experiments that have led to some of the things that you found online, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the one of the big principles I have in terms of risk management. It's similar. It's this concept of the black swan. I don't know if you've heard.
Okay, the book I know of, but I don't really. Yeah,
the black swan. So, and I talk about it sometimes on this podcast, and quite a lot in real life, which is so the black swan was the reason why it's called the black swan is because for many years everyone in Europe thought all swans were white because that's all they've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then when we discovered Australia, we found black swans in Australia. So, but one observation of the black swan negated millennia of millennia of belief that all swans were white. And so things that are black swan phenomena are things that were really unexpected, that change everything. And there can be positive black swans and negative black swans.
Okay.
So the things that we don't know could really harm us.
Yeah.
And so we don't know when we're taking a decision in the midst of uncertainty. Yeah. So rather than, bet it all, then take lots of little experiments where the downside, if if it doesn't work out, then that's fine. That's you lost a month of your life or whatever. But
I agree.
But the upside could be, I never realized that Spain was such a fabulous country, or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow, and just expose yourself to these things, and then there's all the upside, the positive black swan. So I think that's a great principle through which to live.
Yeah.
And because we don't know, we don't know how the world's uncertain, so we don't know lots of stuff. So just taking little things. Trying little things, as you say. So that's why I really like the concept of shadow testing. So just try, and this, oh, wow, everyone wants this. So
absolutely.
That's, we can do that.
And that's going to be a big pivot, perhaps, in my forthcoming direction because of this test that we ran upon the recommendation of my friend who had followed the same model. He said, I'm going to help you build it, and then let's share in the profits together if it works. And it's worked fabulously well. And I thought, wow, it's opened up a whole new world to me, because I thought, so you're exactly right is what I'm trying to say.
No, it's a really powerful concept, but I'm going through that as well myself, and I think we all go through this sort of, I need to put these principles into practice in a variety. We all do. So it's good. It's a really powerful reminder.
No, agreed.
Of all of that. Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about ultra endurance and your adventures in ultra endurance and why you do that? Because I'm also an endurance athlete. I just did my first triathlon at the weekend.
My man, high five.
Yeah, thank you.
Good stuff.
It was this, it was the swim that prevented me from doing. I've done duathlons, ultra duathlons, long.
I hate
cycling.
swimming.
Yeah, so the swimming was just like, but I have to do it. So
exactly. Well done.
Yeah,
that's the big kind of hairy. That's the kissing the frog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Getting into the pool, and it's
getting into the pool and learning to breathe properly underwater.
I'm terrible at triathlons. Right. I hate them. I do not enjoy the experience of swimming. I do not enjoy the experience of cycling actually either.
Right.
I don't enjoy either of them, which is part of the reason why I do them today. Okay. But we'll come to that, because your question, of course, was I started at 23. My first marathon was in Chicago.
Sorry, how old are you now?
I'm 32.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started at 23, I believe. My first actual endurance event. I'd been running. So running is my thing. I'd been running, I used to run at the local park with a friend of mine, Tom. We went for runs on like Christmas Day and stuff. Because Christmas isn't a real thing anyway. His family were Jewish. It was always funny, like a funny thing. And we go for these runs on Christmas Day. And his father, who was like a former professional footballer, a family of professional footballers would be shouting at us in the face, being like, come on, run. So that kind of was something that, had stuck with us. And it really took till 23 when I did my first marathon. It was in Chicago. And before that, the furthest I'd run was 7 miles. I booked a marathon. And the way that I kind of made sure that I would kind of follow through and perhaps do the training necessary was I booked it on my credit card with money that I didn't have to fly to Chicago, which was not sensible at all. Most people go and do an event down their local park. To run the marathon, and me and my girlfriend at that time would fly out there, and you know, so you spend like, you know, £1,000 with accommodation and flight and all this stuff. So then it's like, wow, the money motivated me to train in a way that I hadn't before, and to overcome that fear that, oh, well, I've never done a marathon. Oh, Deepak, you need to like train. You need, like, there's all this stuff you need to do, but I didn't have the impetus. I didn't have a push that would really take me into to nosedive into the training. And when I was 22, sorry, maybe it had been, I can't remember. It was at that period, but I spent money that I didn't have. And that gave me the push to actually get into the training. So that's, I mean, that moment really, took me to today, and I think I don't remember, it's been like 23 marathons now that I've done or something. I enjoy them now, and the new challenge really, as you just identified, is triathlons. So it's like Ironman, and I'm typically, you know, the last one out in the pool when I swim. I'm typically the only brown guy as well, a lot of the time.
It's a very white sport for some reason. Yeah. I
think that, you know, it definitely it is a very white sport. It's definitely not a kind of Indian sport as well, even less so. That's always fun. I remember my first triathlon, actually. You're going to like this story. So I was in Lausanne. I was living with my friend in Chigny, which is a small town near Lausanne, Luke. My best friend, he's in Barcelona now, and we had just come back from living in Brazil because I was out there fighting Muay Thai. So I'd had my first
fight. Gotta get into that too.
Yeah, so that's on YouTube as well. You can see me fighting this other dude, and I was looking to fight again in Lausanne. So we were training with this guy who's like a world champ in his. But then I found out I'd broke 2 toes, and I didn't realize I'd broken them. I think once I went to get an X-ray or something. So then we happened to be walking past. At this point, my background was I'd done an ultramarathon. I'd done my first long ultra. It was like 27 hours, 7,200 meters of elevation.
Which one was this?
Madeira.
Right.
So it was like 7,200 meters of elevation gain, and that's why it took 20. There was like a 50% fail rate. It was
crazy,
it was the elevation gain that was actually the most difficult thing, as you would know from it's the terrain a lot more than the distance oftentimes.
Runners in cities maybe don't appreciate that as much as those that are, and also cyclists who don't train in hilly, you know, terrain, and how much the elevation gain slows you down.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you span that out, they're like, wow, you did like 120 kilometers and 26 or 20. They're like, Deepak, that's really slow. I'd be like, dude, go.
Just try it.
Try the hills.
And then they'll say, well, but you've got the downhills, right? Yeah, right.
Exactly.
It's different. Running downhill is not good on the quads, and it still does not make up for the amount of time you're spending going uphill.
Absolutely.
So, well done.
It was an adventure. So then I thought, because of those things, I saw a billboard saying triathlon, Olympic triathlon Lausanne, and I was like, I can do that. It can't be that hard. Yeah. So then I just signed up. We just went online and signed up. Yeah. I turned up to the lake in Lausanne without a wetsuit because I didn't know. I didn't know that you meant to.
I would have.
So there was this like brown dude in Lausanne, Switzerland,
no wetsuit,
no wetsuit, in his shorts, and I got a lot of tattoos, everywhere, and people thought that I was a hot shot. They thought, who's this guy that's turned up in his shorts? They're like, oh, you swimming without a wetsuit? And I was like, yeah. And then I was looking around, and I was like, no one's in a wetsuit. No one is not in a wetsuit. So then you kind of have a. I remember heading out and realizing, oh my God, swimming is like really hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, this isn't about strength. This isn't about endurance.
It's technique. It's all technique.
I was like, and I was
not all technique, but it's pretty much technique.
And it was brutal to see. They had like staggered starts based upon age groups.
Yeah.
And I, went out with the, I don't know, but it was like 18 to 30 group. Then there was like the 31 to 45 group. Then there was the 45 to like 60 group or whatever. And I just began to slowly see these different color head caps go past me.
You're going past,
as I was moving towards breaststroke. So I was like, oh, this is I was so disorientated because I was like, where am I going? I'd only tried pool swimming. I need to see. And then my goggles were starting to fill up because, I didn't really, there was lots of things I just didn't, I didn't know what I didn't know. So that was an example where I didn't plan, I didn't prepare, and I got served up. Because then I also went onto the bike and we were going up some hills. And I was like, oh, I do ultras. I can do these hills. Oh my God. It was like really different going up a hill on a bike.
Yeah, it is. Especially if you don't have the right gearing on the bike. Yeah.
And, I'd been training on my friend's old mountain bike through like for the week before the event. So then I got a tattoo of Triathlon de Lausanne like the day after on my thigh to remind me of this abject failure that I had.
Did you finish it?
I finished. I finished last. I think I got. I think I finished last in the. I don't know if it was a whole event, but probably in the whole event. Yeah. And my next event after that, Ben, was Ironman South Africa.
Right. Okay.
And
I presume you're better prepared though.
That was a great reminder of what I needed to do to prepare for the next event, and that took me to I was living in Italy. I was training with a national swim coach. I was running 10k to the pool. He was brutalizing me for an hour and a half. Then I'd run 10k back. Another day I'd go to the gym and spend 4 hours on the watt bike because I didn't have my own bike. And I was like, right, I don't know how fast I'm going to go, but to begin with, I'm just going to stay on this bike for like 4 hours. Yeah. And even that was like a nightmare.
That's hard, especially indoor bike, watt bike for 4 hours.
It's just,
that's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's the mental side of it.
You're not going anywhere. You're just in the gym. You're looking around.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it's still an adventure that I enjoy, and I still do the watt bike today. I did it a couple of days ago, 4.5 hours on the watt bike because I enjoy the mental side of it. It's like hard mentally. It's just because it's so boring and you're like, oh my God, I want to get off. Oh my God, I want to do this. Oh my God, I can't pee on the bike. Oh my God, like all of this other stuff. So I really do enjoy the adventure of these things and kind of what it teaches you about pain, because then it really helps me transition those skills into my workplace with the building of the SEO agency, with the approach to trying to build building an SEO agency and growing and us winning awards, but then also launching a course on the side, and then also trying to putting some money into algorithmic, taking tests and developing the mental stamina to keep up with...
There's an endurance aspect to that as well.
With the volume of things that come in, and thinking, okay, yep, you can do that because this feeling of tiredness is not a real thing. It's not real. It doesn't exist. And then just plowing through, whether it's the email responses that I get, whether it's someone asking me for a refund for the course because I said, Deepak, I've just paid. This happened a couple of days ago. Abdul, he paid like $1,000 for the course, and he's like, I don't appreciate this whole thing about you releasing the course in drips over the next 16 weeks. I'm really unhappy. I'd like a refund unless you give me immediate access to the course. I didn't have access to give him because I don't have a course. I built like the first 2 hours of it, and I'm like, alongside maybe I double book a podcast, and I'm meant to be on 2 podcasts at the same time, and I'm like, what do I do? And then I've got to still go for my swim, and I hate swimming, and my swim. All of this stuff has really been helped by the pain aspect to endurance sports, and I love what it gives me in the workplace so much. Because it increases my ability to focus over time, as well as just the energy level to get up and just hammer things out and sustain kind of a sustained tempo of work, if that makes sense. Like the quality of the work that you can do is a much more impactful.
Yeah, there was, I have a lot of friends who are endurance athletes, and they always get back to you eventually, right? So they make a commitment, and eventually it might not happen when you want it to happen, or but eventually they're there because they know the art of plodding along and plodding through, and you just have to
exactly
that.
I think so, and definitely I've been really thankful to see how helpful it's been in life, and the 27-hour run actually is an interesting one, because previous to that, the furthest that I'd run was in the Brecon Beacons. I think it was the same kind of route they say that the Special Forces do, and later I went and did an application, but that was 65 kilometers, and that was only 2,000 meters of elevation or something.
What was the Madeira one?
It was 115 kilometers. So that was the kind of difference in distance, which I didn't really appreciate, was quite a big jump to go from one event to the other. And the 65K was my first ever ultra I
distance,
think, and that was trail. And then the second ever, I think, was Madeira, which was 115. So I am not a part of the ultra community. So I don't have, even today, any friends who are endurance athletes. Most of my friends still are in business because it is what it is. It's just how it's played out. That was, and I was living in Lisbon at the time. That in the lead up to training for Madeira. So to give some context, because I've mentioned a couple of countries here, I at about 24, after I left the recording studio behind, or 25, I then transitioned to starting a tutoring agency, and that went relatively well. And I saved up some money. I think I saved up £27,000. I remember the figure. And I decided to shut down the business, and I did that by just turning off my mobile phone and then being like, okay, well, work's been delivered. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go away. I'd come out of a relationship that hadn't worked out, and I was quite unhappy. And adventure, I felt, would be my escape. Which proved not to be really how it played out in terms of helping. I was
going to say, because there's that. I've lived in different countries, and the one variable that's constant is yourself. So
I tried to. I made exactly. You know, I made a good attempt at running away from my own problems, which were about me. The breakup being problems that I brought to the relationship that came probably in part because of the upbringing that I'd had. My parents at 11 and 13 got married, children, raising children, the environment, what I'd become accustomed to. Put your head down, don't discuss feelings. If you argue, then doesn't matter. Brush it under the bed. You know, you can say horrible things and it doesn't matter. Just get on with it. And taking that into relationships with people that had grown up in much more nurtured environments, and those relationships then blowing up. And being like, that's not how you deal with me, Deepak, in a relationship, and that's not how. And me trying to find some solace through pain, because it was something that had become familiar to me, and I used it as a crutch. So that's also in part why I began. I got my whole arm tattooed. I was like, okay, cool, I'll get tattoos. Okay, cool, I'm gonna do a world tour. I'm going to live in Brazil 3 months. I'm going to live in Lisbon 3 months, and I'll live in Malta, then Amsterdam. I'll do this, I'll do that, and that was, I was the running consistency, as you said, across the adventures. I'm really glad because that it's all happened, because the reasons that I went out and started weren't the reasons that I finished these things, because I did end up, and what I failed to do at that time was to follow my own rule. I was aware I had problems, but I didn't research how to really solve them. So then once I began, and that happened by calling the Samaritans once, and they say, this is a space, and then I began Googling. I began Googling issues of self-esteem, issues of insecurity, issues, and then I began to find books. Loving What Is, I think, was one of them. Then I was like, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus. Then it was like the 5 love languages. Then it was then it was cognitive behavioral therapy. Then I went into therapy whilst I was traveling to speak to someone to say, look, these are the symptoms. I swear when I'm in a relationship and say, you this, you that, and I recognize intellectually that there's no recourse for me to say those things, even if whatever someone says. It doesn't matter about their stuff. This is my stuff that I bring to it, but I don't have the tools. I don't know how to solve that. I know that I should, but knowing that I should doesn't help me actually fix it. And then they were like, right, these are some strategies. Let's start split testing these different strategies. Let's try strategy number 1. What you're going to do is you're going to have a chart. You're going to measure the feeling. You're going to measure the behaviors. You're going to measure the consistency of the feelings, and we're going to start tracking things. And oh my God, this was like amazing to get given a roadmap for how to control my emotions. And I'd never, ever experienced anything like that before with this stuff, because I was sorely underdeveloped when it came to my emotional development. That was kind of a running unspoken theme that was part of my...
It's really brave of you to have sought out help.
Yeah, I think that...
a lot of people don't, especially men. We like to bottle it up and not reach out.
I definitely didn't reach out to my parents, my friends or my family, because... I was kind of embarrassed, and that moment where I did call the Samaritans, when I'd had a massive argument with my partner at that time, things were like really shitty, and I was like, this sucks. And it was something that repeated itself multiple times. I was like, dude, you're not solving this by yourself. Jesus Christ. This is like, you're not doing it. It's the same. You're in the same rut, the same rut. And it was like, wow, you got to do something. And I didn't know who I could talk to, because I'm a dude, number one. And then also, like, I didn't know that my family, because my family all grew up in the same environment I did. They're like,
what are they going to do?
What are they going to do? What's therapy? What's therapy? So I called, and that was very, that has helped me so much, I think, with everything that I do. It's led me to have the bravery to, start a business by myself. Historically, I started with partners. I started it with inappropriate business partners because I had an emotional crutch. I was really calling to the fear of not being able to rely upon myself, the neediness to get some kind of external validation, and the getting the tattoos on the arm, or the initial runs that I did were really about my way of trying to get validation from the world.
Right. And look at what I've done.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't even cognizant to that until I really got into therapy, and I discovered this whole new space of like stuff in my head.
That's pretty awesome. I love that story. I love how you reached out for help and all those tools. I think there's so many wonderful things out there that are just free or not free, Absolutely. But they cost very little, and they can make a huge impact in our lives.
It was incredible, Ben. And then I began to think, well, how else can I apply this? Then I began to look up books on sex, books on cooking. But I left what happened. I think that Ragni from Mind Charity, I don't know her last name because it's all confidential. She's a woman that changed my life. This 60-year-old Indian lady who'd had whatever training she'd had in cognitive behavioral therapy, but she introduced me, because before that I tried like psychodynamic therapy, I tried person to count. It didn't really work for me because I didn't get, okay, we're going to talk about your background, and this is, it was cathartic because it was great. I talked about, how difficult it was growing up, but then I'd go out into the world and I'd repeat my same errors. And I was like, I don't, this isn't working for me because I'm still arguing with my girlfriend. I'm still blowing up with my friend. I'm still making these same mistakes. And when I was introduced to cognitive behavioral therapy, being given a potential roadmap and saying, this is even a sitemap. This is one of several potential roadmaps, Deepak. I don't know which one is going to work for you. What we're going to do as part of this journey is going to explore each of them, and we're going to discover where your wins are going to come from. And that really spoke to kind of the data-driven approach I'd been accustomed to. And I didn't really know such a thing even existed. In the emotional space. I thought, it's all hoo-ha. It's okay, we're going to talk about your emotions.
Your feelings, your upbringing, your childhood traumas, all that,
exactly.
All that stuff.
And then that really was useful in me leaving my arrogance behind me, because I think that a lot of us as men, we get quite arrogant in assuming that we can figure it out, and that we know the answers, or the problem is solved by not approaching the problem, or by deflecting, or some variation of that.
Sure.
And then that's where I thought, well, let me read more about cooking. Let me read more about intimacy. Let me read more about relationships. Let me read more about everything. And my God, it changed the quality of my relationships overnight, because I began to develop even the tiniest insights into about how important it is when people come in, and if my partner invites her friends over, I spend at least 3 or 4 dedicated minutes being, hey, so Francesca, Daniela's told me all about you. So you went swimming in that crazy lake that didn't you? And little things like that were like so important to our relationship. And then also like knowing that spitefulness does not serve anybody. And in those moments of when, for example, my partner might get my partner's Italian, so sometimes she'll her way of communication, she'll get bread might fall on the floor and I feel like someone died. But recognizing that it's a different mode of communication.
Yes.
And the 5 love languages taught me about the different styles of communication that people have, and that I shouldn't blow up because it doesn't serve anybody, and I shouldn't get defensive. I should just weather the storm, and it's not about me blaming her. Doesn't serve
It's
us.
hard, right? It's
exactly. And it was only through the testing that we did, and trying different things that I learned about in CBT, and then reading up on these books, and really realizing, well, Deepak, you have to try an alternative approach. Why are you being so arrogant and just saying something back? That's not behaving like a data scientist. That's behaving like a clown. Because you're just, it's rinse, repeat, repeat, argue, rinse, repeat, argue. So now try, don't walk out the door. You're like, oh, well, then she's going to think you're, but it's a different response. And that created new behaviors that led to, so it was,
it's also, if we're competitive, I don't know how competitive you are, but I don't know. I have a little, I'm competitive, not obsessively so, but there's no point in winning the argument. It's not about winning the argument, right?
Absolutely. And that was what really I wish, I say I'm happy to have discovered when I did that, dude, the win is about the long-term goal. And you have to, and it's really weird, but what the books gave me was a set of almost business tools that I could apply to a relationship that would lead to much greater results, because they're like, look at your girlfriend or partner as like the long-term stock. She's the biggest investment that you're going to reap the greatest returns, and far greater than Pearl Lemon, your SEO agency, far greater than trading or course. That this is where you need to invest. So that means, how does that change your approach?
Sure. Although that might not be the most romantic thing you could say.
Definitely.
But that's some really good insights, because all these parts hang together, right? You can't just, if the relationship part is not working, then the business part is going to seep into that. You're going to be unhappy, or you're going to look for validation in something else. And
absolutely.
Eventually it breaks down, right? So all the parts need to be in harmony in some way.
And it's made my ability to perform in sports greater, because I've got a strong supporting unit now at home, and I don't feel that I'm alone, and she's supportive of me, and recognizing that there's alternate approaches with dealing with my emotions has also helped me approach the experience of pain differently, because I'm like, okay, Deepak, here's pain. You can quieten the noise, or accept that there's pain. Don't try and fight it. Embrace it. Kind of live in it and be like, okay, you're in pain. It's fine. Cool. Just, it's okay. Let it wash over you, like we often don't do when we argue. When anger clouds, you don't just accept that you're arguing. You're like, oh, why are you arguing for? Why are you shouting for? I don't understand this. Just accept. Okay. So there's been lots of transitions that it's been really helped with, because that was also the time that I started cognitive behavioral therapy. Was also the time that I started doing the ultras and and all of the endurance sports, and it began to open up this kind of new cognitive space for me.
That's really powerful, and I think more of us should be, particularly men, should be thinking about how we're feeling, how we're doing, and there's so many techniques as well. So some people, meditation is good, but for I find the really big things in life, meditation is great for I think keeping a sense of awareness on a daily basis. But if you have a big problem, you're not going to meditate your way out of it necessarily. So if you need help, look for help.
Agreed. I completely agree then.
Could we talk a little bit about so your business in search engine optimization? Not to
let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah. Well, how did you get into doing that? And it strikes me as
weird.
Not weird, but you're into rapping, adventures, all of that stuff. So then search engine optimization.
I'm still in search of whatever my higher purpose might be.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I know that. I know that I don't know exactly what my higher purpose is. Right. Okay. I think I'm beginning to figure it out. But really, what the SEO agency was about was me applying to the British Special Forces, discovering that I hated the whole experience because of the lack of autonomy that I was given when I was away at boot camp.
When did you apply for the...
I applied after... So I did Madeira, the Ultra. I did Ironman, South Africa. And then I was looking for a new adventure. And then my friend found this guy, because I was looking for a new Ultra to do, because I wanted to go back to Ultras. And we were looking at like Badwater, I think. And then Dave Goggins came up. Who you probably are familiar with, and
I've heard of him. Yeah,
he's like
amazing guy.
Exactly. And then my friend said, "Oh, look, check this dude out. He's like a former Navy SEAL." And I said, "What's a Navy SEAL?" And he's like, "Oh, it's look it up." And then I googled British equivalent to Navy SEALs, and it was like SAS. And I thought, apply online to SAS. And really, that was the path that I was on, because I was still unhappy at that time, if I'm being honest with you. I was looking for a nursing aid to deal with the fact that some of my personal relationships weren't working, and I thought, let me forget.
This is the thing. This is the solution.
Yeah.
Or this is the
this
thing.
This is the thing. So that was when I was 28 or 29. So I applied to 2-1 SAS, which is in the UK. You can't apply to be a full-time. You can't apply to be a full-timer.
Yeah.
You have to apply as a part-timer unless you've done previous military experience and you're already an active part of the army. So I applied, and then things didn't work out. I think that ultimately, I withdrew when I wasn't even away. It wasn't like I was on a hill and I packed it in. I withdrew because I dreaded the fact of going away to boot camp again. And it was the kind of environment where, like tax consulting,
it's a different form of the Deloitte experience, I think.
Exactly. It wasn't something that I could kind of breeze through. It's like, dude, you've got to win it. The people that are here, and it was the same. What you said earlier was exactly the case. In those environments, there were people at Deloitte that wanted tax and they were good at it already, and that was gonna be a big part in the success that they would have. And I didn't have either of those things. So I was just gambling on work ethic and natural talent, but absent passion and interest, it's not
something like that. Yeah, forget about it.
Exactly, and that's exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing. Sometimes it's we think it's wrong to quit something or to walk away, and that's not the case at all.
Yeah,
because it's not necessarily quitting. It's readjusting, recalibrating, what have you. But Kathy O'Dowd was one of my guests. She was the first woman to summit Everest from both the north and south sides. Wow. Mountaineer, but she does speaking, and and I love the mountaineering analogy because there's so much that relates to risk.
Okay.
Because you don't know what the weather's going to be like, and you have to work as a team, and there's so much stuff. But one of the things that really stuck with me in speaking to her is you have to know when to quit, because if you don't, then the consequences could be life threatening. And so it's important to know, and there's nothing wrong with taking that decision. If you think it through. So there's no shame in that. This is not for everyone.
No, absolutely. And at that time,
which makes these people great, right?
Yeah.
Because
this is why they're amazing at what they do, and they're elite operators, because it is not for everybody, and it's a combination of all of those factors that need to come into play. But
it also doesn't make you any lesser of a.
Well, I was watching a whole Netflix series and sitting at home in the day doing nothing and really not being active or powerful in other parts of my life. And I was watching myself disintegrate emotionally. And at that time, because I'd been through a certain amount of therapy, I was self-aware enough to realize that, Deepak, you're getting depressed, like super fast. Because of this whole thing that's hanging over you, and you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
That's the thing. I think you were doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, you got to.
Not that physically you probably could have found a way. But,
absolutely. And it was that. So, I turned 30, and I didn't have an income, and I needed to build an income, and I knew that I was good at marketing. So then I started in October 2016. I incorporated the business with a partner. We went separate ways. We had a different vision for this business. He has an office and employees and meets people face to face. I wanted a remote and distributed team. I never wanted to meet any of my clients, and it meant that how we approached business was very different. And that was something we discovered early on enough to retain our friendship, which is good, because it was a difficult few months that things became really tense. And within that, I ultimately started, Pearl Lemon started as a digital marketing agency. So I was scrapping or hustling. I would do anything that was marketing to try and pay bills to keep kind of the lights on. For me, that was the most important thing, is that Deepak, make money, like build an income, and then figure out how to build a reliable income and retain a client. Yeah. But that's tomorrow. Today, you need to solve the number one problem, which is you need cash flow. You need cash flow. So it was just through that in August 2016, August 2017, I got my first SEO client kind of by accident. And that client, George, paid me more money than any of my other clients. And he was like, right, I'll be with you for a year. And I looked at this business and I thought, well, this is way better than copywriting because it's SEO. People tend to go in with a long-term view. It's technical enough that, people don't tend to, or depending upon the business, they won't really do it in-house necessarily because there's a little bit of web development, there's a little bit of offline.
And were you sort of self-taught? Or
yeah, again, same process. I was looking up on Udemy and watching courses ravenously.
So one of your skills is be able to get up learning curves quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So what led me to it ultimately was I did have some skill set in marketing broadly because I'd started businesses, so you learn about stuff, but specifically
you have
SEO.
The web presence, you've done some of that stuff
Exactly,
already.
exactly. So specifically SEO, I started watching Udemy courses, WordPress SEO, technical SEO, this SEO, that SEO. I began tinkering and explaining and building. So I had enough of a sense of it to know how to hire for it. So then I was like, right, I need to build a team, but let me get some. So I got the client, George. At that time, I didn't have an SEO team. But I kind of sold the project, but I knew enough about hiring because I'd had other projects. So then I went out to the marketplace based upon some of the learning that I had done anyway previous to meeting George, because I was trying to SEO my own website and I was like, okay, I'll learn about it. So it kind of all came together. And then I binned every other aspect of our business and I began to refashion what you see online today, Pearl Lemon SEO agency. And the trajectory has been really, we've won awards now for SEO. It's been weird. Like, it's not stuff that,
No, there was. There were. Actually, I guess there would be.
Neither did I until we won. Agency Spotter. We're ranked number 17, 19 of 2,300 agencies for them. So this stuff has started to happen. And I think that, again, it's been a means to an end. It's reliable income. I am passionate enough about helping businesses, but I don't know that it's my life calling. It'd be a lie for me to say it is.
That's fine. I mean, I think as long as it's something that you're enjoying and it provides you with whether it's the income or the freedom to do
and it's a little bit of both.
And
Absolutely.
That's great. It's not this sort of thing about just following your passion. I don't think is the greatest of advice, because
I think for many of us that we don't know what our true calling is, and that's what undercuts it, because entrepreneurship is not a passion, and people that's
it's the thing, it's the tool, it's the way in which you might live out that passion, but you still have to have the thing, entrepreneurship around what.
And there's very few of us. Of course, we know the places most prominent in our music and sport. It's it feels very self-evident. Michael Phelps had to love swimming to get to where he got, and the same,
But even then, I'm sure he's had some days where he didn't.
Exactly,
like it.
Exactly. So for me, as you asked, it's something that I enjoy enough to do it on a day-to-day basis, and it's pragmatic because it's a good business model. I do like the business model. I like the nature of the retainer clients. I like the fact that clients understand that we don't really need to meet face-to-face necessarily, because it's all about digital anyway. So for all of those reasons, I think it's a business that I'm enjoying, and it gives me the room to tinker on this other stuff that we briefly spoke of.
Yeah, passions change, right? So you do have to be able to tinker. And, you might there might be a passion out there that you just didn't know anything about. It might be, I don't know, it might be knitting, it might be whatever. It's like, oh my god.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got to be comfortable with that again, because I think and it's. We go back to the biggest risk of them all is not being able or understanding how you can generate your own income. What are the tools that you can use today?
Yeah, that's a foundation, right? That's a basis for lots of things. Yeah,
that's a foundation, and that's what's allowed me to start a tutoring agency, or the SEO agency, or to do anything that I do. It's like, right, Deepak, you need an income.
Yeah.
And then from that base of having some form of income, you can go do some sexy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've been going for over about an hour and 15 minutes, so we're covering a lot of ground. But I did want to get your take on, after all of this, do you have any specific views? And you don't have to have any, but do you have any views around risk taking and managing uncertainty that come out that my listeners might be interested in hearing?
I think that for me, one of the important things is developing I call it the alternative voice. So the alternative voice is the one that speaks back to that fearfulness that lives inside you. The voice that says, okay, I shouldn't do that, or that's scary. And a voice, I often use a voice that talks back saying it is scary, but it's going to be good for you. It is going to hurt, but that means you're going to grow. So that ulterior or alternative voice has been very useful for me. That's number one. Number two, I think that it's what they talk about in the SEALs. The way that you build composure under moments of extraordinary pressure is by continual re-exposure to things that you're afraid of. I think there's no theory that can really replace the practice of doing it. So go out and do something that scares you. In our case, actually, for both of us, it's swimming. In the triathlon event,
but we did it in triathlons, so we didn't go out into the middle of a lake on our own without without a wetsuit or whatever.
Absolutely.
You're in a race, but that means there are other people. There's a safety element. So
Absolutely.
What's there to fear, really?
Exactly. And everyone,
other than looking, coming out of the water last, which
exactly.
So what?
And fear is often exaggerated in our own mind. So the practice of writing down what's the worst income. It's what's the worst outcome, of acting is I found to be very powerful. So if you're afraid, write down every possible worst consequence. And one of the questions, should be, am I going to die? No, probably not. Really unlikely. And then you realize, oh, wow, well, and then the act of writing it and using it, that was something for me that I used when I was trying to quit Deloitte. I was like, does this make you happy, Deepak? It was like, no, like underlined. And that became more powerful than every reason that was logical to stay because of the career, the salary, the income, the reputation. I was like, but does this make you happy? It was like, no.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, wow, okay, this outweighs them all. So I found that those things, the act of writing down the possible worst outcomes, the development of the alternative voice, as well as like continual exposure to doing something that you find painful, because invariably, even if it's not in the space that you don't act powerfully, I'm not a great fan of compartmentalization. I think everything bleeds into everything else. Nothing is disconnected. Steve Jobs talks about it, of course, in his famous speech about, the dots connect. Yes. They do. So, if there's a space that you can activate something that is scary for you, that maybe feels a bit safer, then do that. Because over time it will, I found that it helps, as we discuss with these endurance events. And I've seen how much it's helped me with my work and emotion, behavioral, all of the therapy stuff, how much it's helped me with my life. So it's like, wow, nothing is separate.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts there, and one was around just the writing down your fears as a technique called what that's called actually is called a pre-mortem. So you write down the worst case scenario basically, and you think about, well, how would that happen?
Okay.
And for me, there are two things that come out of that. One is that the worst case wouldn't be that bad, and then secondly, as you think about how this could happen, you can find ways to, well, we could deal with that by whatever, doing this, or you could deal with quitting Deloitte. It's like, well, I could deal with that by figuring out how I might build a studio beforehand or whatever. So that's exactly what you just described, pre-mortem. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm learning loads today with you. This is brilliant.
The other thing is around endurance sport, because there's been loads of studies that have shown with professional cyclists and triathletes and things, it's that those who do better at those sports sometimes are not necessarily the fittest, or maybe I've got this wrong, but I think it's those who can endure the pain. In fact, I think there was a study, and I'll try and dig it out, trained cyclists versus non-cyclists, and it was just a simple put your hand in some ice, and who can kind of which people can withstand and leave it there for as long as you can, and it's those cyclists who outperform the whatever non-trained people, and it's the endurance sport allows us to, as you say, well, it's endurance, right? We endure, and it's just it's a skill to be able to endure. That's the race is going to finish one way or the other. We're going to get through this, so just just get through
just
it. And that's a skill.
Staying power.
It doesn't stay. The shitty moment doesn't stay forever. Right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it sucks when you're in the process of it, of course, but that's the whole point. That's the point. That's where the growth is.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
How are you going to deal with that? So it is interesting. But that's exactly, you described just those two things exactly.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Without knowing.
Well, this is the beautiful thing about, hearing your insights into my experiences, because it helps me bring like the vocabulary that I don't have in respect of how to describe some of these techniques. So pre-mortem and the
just endurance sports. I don't know if there's a word for that, but I as we know, I think the more that we as endurance people practice endurance, the more that becomes a skill. As you say, it bleeds into everything else.
Exactly. No, I agree. Oh wow.
We've covered lots of ground. Was there, and I'm conscious of your time, and we think we do need to wrap up soon. But was there anything that you wanted to mention that we didn't get a chance to cover at all?
I think that I think the one thing that I would mention that maybe we didn't directly cover, that's perhaps useful for your audience about kind of all things risk, is the leap of faith is still involved in every element of risk.
Everything has uncertainty. You can't get rid of it.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that is perhaps useful, as it has been useful for me, is that I do minimize risk, but at the same time I'm also accepting. Deepak, some risk exists. This might not. You could plan everything and this still might not work.
Nothing is certain, right? So that's the other thing. We've got this word risk that is sometimes it's a negative, but it's just a fact of life. If we want to do anything, we've got to take some risk. And as long as you know what the risks are, and if lots of things don't work out.
Absolutely.
But we knew what the risks were.
Absolutely.
And I'd sometimes, again, my listeners this is another term, the zone of regret versus the zone of disappointment. So the zone of regret is, I didn't take that chance, or I tried something stupid and it blew up in my face. The zone of disappointment is going to try this. We know what the risks are. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I'm disappointed, but I move on. So there's a difference between those two.
There is
two things.
That makes sense.
You've captured that really well just now.
Okay, brilliant. No, that makes a lot of sense. The zone of thank you. I've learned another thing. Amazing.
No worries. Before we go, how can my listeners learn more about you, look you up on social media, all that good stuff?
For those of you who are listening, you've obviously seen my name. Google it, of course. Deepak Shukla.
And your rapper name is
Deep Impact. Look at my name, DEEP, and then Impact, like my name. So Deep Impact or deepakshukla.com. So my name is my website name, and then I've got a ton of stuff on YouTube. So any of those spaces are excellent for people to do their own kind of self-discovery.
Brilliant. This was great. Deepak, thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, Ben, no, thank you. It's been really fun being on your show.
Let's stay connected, right? Let's do this again, or we'll do something else. Let's collaborate. No. So
absolutely.
Brilliant.
Dude,
thank you.
No, thank you.
All right. I hope you all enjoyed that. Check out the show notes to learn a little bit more about Deepak. And if you've been inspired by this and would like to face your fears, or if someone you know is in the process of taking or making a difficult decision, perhaps you or they might benefit from a little bit of training. As I mentioned in the intro, I'll be running a webinar on decision making on Tuesday, the 27th of November. Learn how to up your decision making game. Find out more, go to the link in the show notes. And of course, subscribe to All Things Risk if you haven't yet done so. allthingsrisk.co.uk, that's .co.uk is where you can find all the ways in which you can do that. We will be back in 3 weeks at the most. In the interim, and as always, don't forget, risk is life.